Hello, everyone. Thanks for
Hello.
joining us. I'm Mariquita, your vegan empowerment coach, and I help vegans that are struggling in anger, depression, and sadness move into peace, power, and effective activism. It's very important as a vegan that we get out there and we are doing activism and really showing the world how vegans are making a difference and that we're shining. And so I'm excited. We have a special guest, but before I get to the guest today, um, please let StreamYard have permission to use your name so we'll know who's here. Tell us where you're joining from and give us your questions and comments. And I also want to tell you that I'm a vegan empowerment coach. So this is all about vegan empowerment. It might be physical, emotional, mental. I mean, it all works together, right?
Mm.
Um, the whole deal, the whole big deal. So if you're interested in coaching one-on-one, I do that, and I do group coaching. So if you're here to find out about vegan fitness and you're here to find out from one of the leaders in the vegan fitness industry who's written, he's an author, he is, um, he's there's so much more now. I'm going blank. I know. I mean, you're a big leader in the bodybuilding field. That's what I was trying to, the word I lost was bodybuilder. So now I caught it. And he's a leader in the bodybuilding field and just a true inspiration. Um, so please welcome everyone, Gabriel Zhanay. And we would love to have his wife here, Anna Zhanay, here also, but she's not feeling well today. So we're going to do the best we can without her, and we're sending her loving vibes and healing vibes. So thank you for joining us today, Gabriel.
Thank you, Mari. Really great to be here. Really great to be with everybody here. I love, by the way, it's great because I know we've been talking for a bit, and it's just great seeing the parallel work that you're doing on your side of the industry. It's just, it really comes down to it, like whether it's health, fitness, activism, it's like it's really taking back our power, right? Empowering ourselves. I love that word, empowerment, right? Where we actually we take control of our own health, our own fitness, our own mindset, but then we use one of the leadership principles to empower others to do the same.
I love that too, because when I saw Bruce Lipton, he was talking about why do we go to the doctor and we make the doctor responsible for our health? How are we listening to the doctor more than listening to our own body and putting
Yes.
the responsibility on him? So that was like such a one, like an aha moment, and it
Mm,
really it's really relevant for here. So
absolutely.
yeah, so tell us about your vegan journey. When did you become vegan, and if you always been in this great shape? I mean, were you a bodybuilder? Did you work out before you went vegan?
Mhm, mhm. So I guess I'll start with vegan first. It's been almost 5 years now, almost 5 years since I became fully vegan. And to backtrack even further back from there. So I grew up being an athlete. So I grew up very like indoctrinated in terms of sports and sports culture. Um, Ended up in my early 20s trying to play semi-professional soccer. So I was very, very like into like sports and athleticism. Um, and about like 6, 7 years ago, I had been really going deeper and deeper in terms of my health, my fitness, and I started learning about like the word vegan, right? Because I never heard that word before. And I remember I was living in New York at the time, and I was going to a meditation center. So every Sunday I would go to a meditation center. And I remember one time I stayed afterwards because, when they say we're offering lunch, I'm like, oh my God, free lunch. Yes, I'm going to stay after. So I went upstairs and they had like the second floor and the lounge. And this was after the meditation. And I remember they brought out all these dishes and they said, these are vegan dishes. And I was like, what is a vegan? Like I heard of vegetarian, but I never heard of the word vegan. And basically they just shared their meals that were made with compassion, right? No animal products that, without suffering. And it was like such an interesting concept for me because especially at that point in my life, I've been going much deeper in terms of more like the emotional aspect, my spiritual, area of my life. And I was like so intrigued because I never considered the thought that what I'm eating can actually, influence or impact, other areas of my life, not just physical, like spiritual, mental, emotional. And it was so interesting. Anna and I had been talking at that point. She was living in Bristol, UK. For those of you familiar with Bristol, Bristol is like a vegan mecca over in the UK. So she was living there for, I think, about 7 or 8 years. She's originally from Poland, and I was living in New York. And I eventually moved out to go move to the UK. And she had been vegan already, I think at that point, like 5, 6 years. And so again, another like information source, like really learning like what it is, like what it means to actually be, fully plant-based, fully vegan, but also the impact. And I remember that first year being fully vegan, and it was like, I was vegan, but I was that internal component hadn't shifted for me. And I remember reading it was like a meditation book, and kind of like the click, right? Where it was like, holy crap, what I'm eating, the consciousness, the animal's body, right? I'm actually taking on in my body. And growing up as an athlete, it was kind of like that insight. Like you have that insight, it's like you can never go back, right? It's like you see that and it's like you can never like unsee that. So yeah, I mean that kind of like summarizes like the vegan journey, and then blending the athleticism. I grew up really scrawny. I grew up like really skinny. I was, really short when I grew up, and I was like the smallest kid. So smallest, shortest, scrawniest. And I remember for me for so long, I was like, oh my goodness, like I just want to build muscle, right? I want to get strong. I want to be confident. And for so many years, I was the exact opposite, right? I was so scrawny. I was so small. I was so tiny. And I remember in my late teens, I started working out, and I got so hooked on it. I was like, oh my goodness, like, speaking about empowerment, what a freaking way to empower yourself than actually going to the gym and following through, right? Saying, I'm going to do the workout, and you conquer the workout, and now you feel stronger, right? You feel more confident, and now you're building muscle. And it was like something that I got so hooked on. And years later, it was, kind of reflecting on the journey. It's like, it's one of the tools, even to this day right now. It's like, if you want to become confident, just go in the gym, lift some heavy weights, and see how confident you are after that. So yeah, I don't know if I answered all the questions, but kind of like summarizing the different components. Yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, and you're right. I remember when I used to run, and had that guy would get runner's high. I would feel so excited, about it. It was great. But you're right, lifting weights and moving and exercising, it's really fun. I mean, for
Mhm.
me, it's fun. And I think I mean, once you get into it, it's really exciting to move your body because it's so natural. And a lot of
Yes.
times we're slowing down as adults. And I remember reading something recently. I mean, it's older age adults, right?
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
because we're just not moving. It's not that we're going to end up just like all these myths that we're going to end up with pills and pills and pills and pills.
Mm.
Well, that can be avoided, right? And then if we're moving all the time and stretching and moving and exercising our bodies the way that they need, then we're
Mm.
really strengthening back to the empowering our bodies, empowering ourselves, and
Mm.
taking control of our life, and not leaving it
Yes.
up to the doctor. Like another thing, another ha-ha moment was when my
Mm.
friend, I used to work at this restaurant called Murphy's Mule Barn, which no longer exists. It was a truck stop. Like it used to be a truck stop. So the old guys would come in, and man, this was chicken fried steaks and gravy. And it was like, ugh. And one of them, he didn't eat that way. And he said, you know, people are eating this way, and then they go to the doctor and they say, now I need you to help me, right? But then,
Mm.
they're putting all this junk in their body, and they expect the doctor to fix it. And that was another aha moment for me that really stood out in my life, thinking, yeah, why are we doing this? And then we're asking doctors who don't know anything about nutrition to
Mm.
help us. All they know is to write prescriptions, and they do a great job at it.
Yeah, yeah, they're they're trained well. Yeah, yeah. But something real quick, if I could piggyback off what you just said there.
Yeah.
When I first started learning about exercise science and exercise physiology, and just immersing myself in the anatomy of the human body, and kinesthesiology, and all these phenomenal, interesting topics. By the way, topics that they don't teach in school at all, and yet are fundamental, right? They don't teach nutrition, they don't teach exercise. Very interesting, right? It's almost like the government doesn't want us to be healthy. Very interesting. Not to go on a tangent, but it reminds me of it. It's like the language, and it's very particular. The language in exercise science is very similar to some of the medical science. What do I mean by that? In exercise science, we actually talk about a prescription. an exercise prescription, right? Which is designed for your body, your health, and your fitness. Isn't that interesting? When you have the right exercise prescription, when you have the right nutrition prescription, right? It's almost like our body naturally wants to heal, to be healthy, and to be fit. But it's interesting because so many of us, we're so confused. We're so fed with misinformation, disinformation, right? Up here, we get confused. But in here, the body wants to actually be healthy and strong. It wants to be fit. That's the natural state. But it's very interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, you're right. And when we listen to our body, if we listen to our body,
Mhm.
it's easy to shut our body off. But when we listen, we know what the body needs, right? If we're
Mhm.
not thriving, if we see that we feel tired and exhausted, and what's going on, the body's saying, "I need something else." I need
Yes.
so and hopefully it's not in the form of a pill or an energy drink, which are so toxic. It's scary. I mean, my friend
Mhm.
was drinking those, and her doctor said those things need to be outlawed. And that was scary. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So I mean, the natural way and the way. I think, I mean, it's very easy. Like for me now, sitting on the computer all the time, it's easy to disconnect from
Mm,
what my body needs, right? It's easy to disconnect from being out in nature. And luckily today, I had something scheduled where I went out. Then my dog and I went to the park
mm,
and walked and everything. And so, this is something to take seriously, because if we don't do this, and throughout our lives. My dad lived a lot longer than my mom. He
mm,
walked every day. He
mm,
always walked, and my mom didn't. She was in the kitchen and doing all that. She just never. I never saw her exercise. And
mm,
yeah, she passed probably, I don't know, 10 years before he did. So maybe
mm,
a little, maybe 15. Yeah, but he was
mm,
walking up to the day he passed. He
mm.
was always in his 80s and walking in Mexico and doing his thing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
It's something interesting. We teach this a lot, especially for some of our more advanced students. We have a front end coaching program we call the Accelerator program, and when students graduate, they move into our phase 2 program, which we call our Inspire program. The reason I mention this is because it's easy, especially in the beginning, to think like, oh my God, I built a habits, I'm getting healthy, I'm getting fit, I'm getting strong, and the reason why 95% of health and fitness programs, of coaches, trainers, nutritionists, why they fail and why 95% of people lose the results, regain the weight, go backwards, right? Is because they don't cover the components of actual sustainability, right? They don't touch on the topics of actually making something permanent. What am I talking about here? Well, the way that we teach a lot of our students is either in life, we're moving forward, we're growing, or we're going backwards, right? There's a myth, and it's a very popular one, right? That we can just maintain, right? I can just maintain my health. I can just maintain my fitness. Now, there's a difference between retaining, right? Of course, you can retain levels of health and fitness, but that's different than maintaining, right? Every single person that we've spoken to, and I'm sure, Mari, you can think of plenty of people too, that says that they're maintaining. Oh, I'm just maintaining my health. I'm just maintaining my fitness. I'm maintaining my finances. I'm maintaining my relationship. Talk to them 6, 12, 18 months later. I guarantee you they've gone backwards, right? The law of entropy, which comes from physics, states that everything in the universe moves towards chaos. This is from physics. Everything in the universe moves to disorder and to chaos. I can guarantee every single listener here, if you stop talking to your spouse, to your partner, to your kids for 2 or 3 years, the relationship would deteriorate. If you stop working, stop taking care of your finances, the money would deteriorate. And if you stop pouring positive energy into your health, your body, and your fitness, by default, it deteriorates.
well, that makes a lot of sense, because when I'm always talking, I mean, I'm talking about moving forward. I'm not saying
Mm,
we're going to maintain here. We're always going to move forward, always going
mhm.
to grow, 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 right? Because
Yes.
once we stop growing, and it's kind of sad because we're almost taught in school. Well, now school's done. Now we don't
And
have to learn anymore.
yes, exactly. We're literally almost spoon fed, like, hey, the growing ends here. Isn't it so interesting that after people graduate college or high school, they almost start to go backwards? Why? Because that's what they were taught. They were told, hey, you don't need to learn anymore. You don't need to grow anymore. That's it, right?
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And we've got to keep moving. We always want to keep learning and growing. And for our brains are just
Yes,
going to turn to mush if we're not learning.
absolutely. Absolutely. If the mountains themselves deteriorate after thousands of years, what about us?
Right. You're right. This is a very inspiring conversation. So let me ask you this. So what what would you say when people say, if you're building, if you're bodybuilding? Because I had a friend ask me earlier when she heard that you're going to be on here. She couldn't join us, but she wants to know about protein. As
Mhm.
vegan protein, what should she be doing? In starting out or working out.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
It's a great topic, and there's a few things to it. I think a few variables. First is understanding the individual's body weight, their height, gender, age, a few different variables, and then also what's the goal, right? And there's a lot of great information, especially in the health world, in the whole food plant-based world, in the vegan health world. There's a lot of great information showing that from a health, I'm going to be specific here, from a health perspective, as vegans, we don't need as much protein from health, right? So
Hmm.
just to be healthy, we don't. But now coming over to fitness, right? And this is where a lot of people, they get a little confused. From fitness, right? Fitness is a little bit different because from fitness perspective, if you're aiming to build muscle and strength, right? Then ideally we need a certain amount of protein intake, right? Let's come back and understand, why is protein important? Protein is important because it's the building blocks for the muscle tissue, right? It's the amino acids that helps build up new tissue. Now, again, from a health perspective, we don't need as much, right? That's why you'll notice many runners, triathletes, they don't need as much, right? But if you're trying to create more like a lean, toned, strong body, right? Especially not just from the muscle mass, also think about the bone tissue, the skeleton, right? When we start lifting weights, when we start strength training, we're not just remodeling muscle mass, right? We're remodeling ligaments and tendons, and the actual bone structure. A lot of people aren't aware that actually we do remodel our bone tissue as we get older, right? Which is phenomenal, right? Because what happens when people are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s? Oh my goodness, I fall down and then you get knocked out, right? And it's like, what if you could fall down, and be okay and be like, oh, just a little bruise, nothing crazy, right? And actually feel strong and confident. So to kind of circle back to the question, um, this will be more of a general rule of thumb. So without knowing the specific context of obviously her individual needs, but if you're aiming to build muscle and strength, typically about 1 gram, so 1 gram per body weight is a good rule of thumb, right? You could even go a little bit lower. I'd say even pushing 0.7, 0.8 grams per body weight. I'll use myself as an example. So let's say 160 pounds, right? So that typically would be close to about 160 grams of protein per day. Again, that can fluctuate a little bit depending on the height, the weight, all that other stuff. Here's the caveat though. If you want to lose weight, now I'm talking more about like if you're aiming to go into a fat loss phase, you're aiming to drop body fat, lose weight. This is where the protein intake can actually go up a little bit higher. And the reason why is because as we are losing weight, as we're losing body fat, not just weight, body fat, the body is indiscriminately dropping muscle tissue and body fat, right? So number one, protein having a little bit higher, maybe 1.2 to 1.5, helps give a signal, oh, let's keep our muscle tissue. And number two, if you're in a fat loss phase, lifting weights will be crucial because again, when you're in a fat loss phase, your body basically is just dropping fat tissue and muscle mass, right? Which isn't great because then it's like, oh, I'm losing all my muscle tone and the fat tissue, right? So again, building muscle and strength, it can be a little bit lower, a little bit more conservative, but when you're going into a fat loss phase, aiming to keep it a little bit higher.
All right. Well, that's good information because a lot of people don't even know where to start. And and then they would need, the one good thing would be to reach out to you.
Yeah, I
To
mean,
go
definitely.
ahead.
Yeah. If you have any, by the way, we have a lot of free resources. We have a lot of free calculators, resources. Like this is stuff that if you have any questions, if you need any direction, I'm sure Madi, you can share some links and stuff below. But yeah, feel free if you have any questions. We're happy to point you in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. And we'll make sure to get all your links and everything. So definitely. So what about people that when you go out, do people ever ask you? I mean, when you're in the gym, so or do people know that you're vegan? Do they ask about that?
It comes up, it's actually a topic of conversation a few times. Um, it typically comes up when we start talking about food or nutrition. And it's sometimes I find that it is a conversation that can actually be a myth breaker. AKA, what I mean here is you, the listener, right? The listener here, you being a healthy, fit, strong role model, immediately, just you embodying that is going to influence and persuade anybody that you meet. Right. And again, it's the law of embodiment, right? How we show up ourselves is how we influence in a positive way every person that we meet. So yeah, definitely it's come up a few times, and it's kind of like created some cognitive dissonance. It's like, whoa, like how can you build so much muscle? How can you be so strong and only eat plants? Like, how is that possible?
Yes, I mean that's the big question. Like, well, how are you getting your protein? And that goes back to the protein question again. I mean, that big myth of that we have to have so much and that
Mm,
we can't get it from plants, which is and yeah, of course that's not true. So what's the difference between protein and amino acids? Because I've heard people think you can't get amino acids from plants.
oh, now we go down the rabbit hole. So actually, amino acids are the building blocks for protein. So basically think protein, it's like I wish I had some Lego pieces right here. But so we have a all right, I'll use my pen right here. So
Okay.
oh, there we go. Protein is this whole segment right here. If I
Hmm.
break it up, right? If I break it up, these would be the amino acids that make up the actual protein, right? So amino acids, and I just took apart my pen there. Um, put that together later. Put my protein together later, okay?
Right. Okay.
The amino acids form links that create a protein chain. So amino acids and protein go hand in hand. They're not like separate entities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now everybody knows I didn't really pay attention in school. So anyway,
They're like, he just broke his pen. That's what we know.
right. Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's another thing and a whole another story. That's funny. But yeah, there's so many things. I mean, what about your extended family? What do they think about you? Are they vegan? Are they bodybuilders? Are they eating plants, or what do they think? Or do you think they think you're crazy?
um, First off, to give a little bit of context too, I actually didn't always do like weightlifting or bodybuilding or physique competitions. For me, actually, for many, many years growing up as an athlete, I was kind of like even anti-resistant to like lifting weights and strength training. Reason why, because I had this kind of like fallacy, this belief in my mind where I thought like if I lift heavy weights, if I spend all this time just like building muscle, I'm gonna get slow and bulky. Right. And a lot of, especially women, right? They have this similar
Oh,
belief where they think that, oh my God, if I lift heavy weights, I'm going to look like a bodybuilder. And the interesting thing, and I wanted to touch on this real quick because I think so many people, they may not be fully aware. They may not fully appreciate the benefits of actual strength training and lifting heavy. And this was me for years, right? So over a decade, I was so convinced, like only light weights, right? Only one. And I noticed it was in that period I had the most injuries, right? I had the most kind of like inconsistent levels of strength, right? And I even noticed like my endurance levels weren't the best. And the reason why is that a stronger muscle is a faster muscle, right? A stronger muscle can respond faster, right? As opposed to a weaker muscle, right? So we actually do want strong muscles, right? And the second point with that is that building muscle is a very time consuming and difficult process. And I'll say that again, just so a lot of people let that sink in. It's a very time consuming and difficult process. Building muscle can take you years, right? Which kind of just a piggyback of what we just said there. It's like, wait a minute. So I could lift heavy weights for 2, 3, 4, 5 years and barely build muscle? Absolutely. And here's another caveat, especially if you're a female listener, women have 10 times less testosterone than men. And for us, it's hard to build muscle. It's really hard. Like we have to bust our butt to build muscle. And for you to even come close to the amount of muscle we build would take you even more, right? So here's the thing. Lifting heavy is the best thing we can do for our body, our skeleton, our ligaments, and our tissue, provided you do it with the right technique and you're doing it with the right form. And number two, unless you're taking some sort of steroids or some sort of drugs, building muscle is difficult, right? We have some of our female students, including my wife. I think about 4 or 5 years ago, she started really dedicating herself to strength training, to lifting heavy. And, one of her motivations, I'm sure she'll be fine if I share, was really going into her later phases of her life and feeling that she's aging gracefully, right? If I remember, quote unquote, like aging gracefully, having a strong, lean, toned body. And part of I think the first year, and I know she's fine if I share this, the first year that she first started training and working out, she really didn't challenge herself, right? She was just lifting the light weights. She was working out, but she wasn't really training, right? She wasn't pushing herself, challenging herself. Second part with that, being more of a kind of like a hard gainer is what we call like someone who like it's hard for them to gain weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely my wife's body type. So she wasn't eating enough, right? And you'll notice, especially if you're vegan or plant-based, you'll notice that if you're eating a lot of whole foods and fruits and vegetables, which is amazing, right? Please keep doing that, right? But you'll notice that the caloric total will be less than some other foods, which sometimes, and we've noticed with a lot of our students, it's easy to undereat, right? And if you're not eating enough and not getting enough protein, you're probably not going to build muscle and you're probably not going to build strength. So for the first year for Anna, she didn't really see any changes. And then that second year, she's like, you know what? I'm gonna be serious about this, right? She increased how much she was eating, right? She added more fruits, get more calories, added a little bit more whole foods, get some more protein, started lifting heavier. And now fast forward 3-4 years, she's built about 10 pounds of muscle, right? Over 3-4 years, right? And
Wow.
mind you, she's almost the same body weight, almost the same body. So body weight didn't, but body composition change, right? Stripping off fat tissue, building muscle mass. I know you asked me a question. I have no idea how I got here. I think you said something about family.
Yes, I asked what did they think about you?
Got you. Thank you. Thank you for redirecting me. But honestly, the first year being vegan, they thought I was crazy, right? They thought I was literally crazy. But one amazing thing about my family, and I'm really grateful for them. They're very accepting. They're very accepting, and they although they may have their comments, like all families, like they may make their comments, they are very accepting. What's interesting from my family, I come from a Latino background, so South American. Both my parents are immigrants. My mother's originally from Colombia. My father's originally from Ecuador. And if anyone here is familiar with Latin culture, South American culture, it's very, very heavy on meat and dairy and animal products, a lot of alcohol too, which is another whole area in itself. Anna is originally from Eastern Europe and from Poland, and very similar to South American, very heavy on meat, alcohol, animal products, like very, very similar. So for myself personally, it really challenged some of my family members' belief systems. Even though they were accepting, they were still making the comments like, you're just going to eat grass. Like, all you eat is fruits and vegetables and all these kind of like, snide remarks. But over time, and this is something that I think is very, very empowering, speaking about empowerment here, is I truly believe the more that you uphold your values, the more that you actually live in integrity yourself, the more easily it is to positively influence and persuade others, right? And I know a lot of people may have a negative connotation when I say influence or even persuade, right? But we all live by influence and persuading each other, right? There's a great quote, one of my favorite quotes here, is that when two people meet, the person with more certainty will influence the other person. So when two people meet, the person with more certainty will influence the other person. Now, the question is, are we influencing in a positive way, right? Or are we influencing in a negative way? Because you can have certainty. Hey, look what happened in Germany with Hitler, right? He was very, very influential, but it wasn't a positive way. And look at some of the great leaders here who do influence in a positive way, right? And so we all have that power to empower, right? When you empower yourself, you start to regain the ability to positively influence others. So hopefully that answered the question. I know I went on a little bit of a tangent there.
That's all good. No, it's great. Yes, and it's so true. And you're right. I mean, when we stand in confidence with ourselves, I mean, we're both working to get people in confidence, right?
Mhm.
You've got to be in a place of confidence if you do want to influence others. So I love that quote, what you're saying. And a lot of times, I mean, that's like when we are not living from our power center,
Mm.
right? We're living from fear. We've stepped out of power center, right? And so we're believing the false all these false things, like, oh, well, I can't do it. I can't lift weights. I can't get up.
Mhm.
That's not serving us. That's not living in alignment with our true being, who we're meant
Yes.
to be.
Yeah.
So, yes. So it's wonderful to hear this. Let me ask you let me ask you a couple questions real quick before I forget them. So let's just let's say somebody, like if I was going to start lifting weights, would I
Yeah.
have to start out like if 5 pounds felt too light? Would I have to start at 5 and go to 10, or could I go to 10? Or what? Do people need to be careful about going up like
It,
that?
it's a great question. I would say, um, especially in the beginning, I'd say the first month, let's say 4 to 6 weeks, really work on honing your technique, right? Like I wouldn't even be too concerned in the first couple months, even not lifting as heavy as you could be, right? Really, especially in the beginning, technique really is the form for anything, right? So really learning, for example, like the three main big lifts, for example, squats, deadlifts, and bench press. Like learning, okay, how am I moving through full range of motion? Right? Doing a bench press, for example, or a squat, like moving through full range of motion. Or even if you can't do full range of motion, because we have some of our students, some of our clients are a little bit older in life, later in life, so they maybe they can't do a full squat or a full deadlift. How can you maximize the efficiency of the technique and then start to load up the pattern? Right? You see, when we load up an efficient technique, right? When you're doing the technique well, loading up is not a problem at all. Where we start to see potential injury is where you're loading up an inefficient technique, right? Where you aren't being, you don't have the form down, or maybe you're doing something maybe a little bit improperly without, contracting the muscles, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there's two parts of it. I mean, many people say, it's so, but you can get injured lifting heavy weights. I'll counter that. I say you have a higher risk of getting injured not lifting weights, right?
Oh yeah.
From losing muscle tissue as we get older every year, from potential risk or injury without having a strong body. I mean, there's more risk from not. There's always risk from something. I have a risk. I could go walk outside and God forbid something happens, in the street or something, right? There's always a risk, right? And I think that's something that keeping that in mind, lifting safely is number one. It's fundamental, but there's no reason you shouldn't be able to challenge yourself. Again, provided there's no health issues, no health concerns, no contraindications. Um, there's a statistic. Back when I was studying inside of my exercise program, my professor, I think it was 25 or 30 years that he was teaching and coaching and training. And interesting insight, after 30 years of training, teaching, and coaching, he said that on average, about 80% of people are lifting within 60% of their potential.
Mhm.
60%. That means you're leaving almost 50% of your actual potential on the table, which is why a lot of people, especially after, 5, 6, 7 months, after a year of like working out and lifting weights, they're like, it doesn't work. I don't see results. And the real reason is it's not that it doesn't work. It's that your body adapted to it, right? The body's so smart, right? It's like, if we keep doing the same thing over and over, it's like, oh, I see what you're doing, Madi. You keep lifting weights. So now I'm going to adapt to these 5 pounds, these 10 pounds, these 20 pounds, and I'm not going to change anymore, right? That's why progressive overload, which is the principle that we're talking about, lifting heavier over time, again, safely, but adding more weight, adding more sets, adding more, that's what drives progress. If you don't give your body a reason to change, it won't change, right? You notice any fitness program that most people go through, P90X, Beachbody, they get great results first 90 days, first 6 months, and then after that, they stop seeing results. Why is that? Because if you do the same thing over and over again, the body will adapt. It wants to always be in equilibrium. So we got to give it a reason, get out of balance, adapt, and then we start to do it again.
Okay, well that answered my other question. So great.
2 for 1.
No, huh? So now we've got a question over here. Let's see, from Nick. Is English breakfast okay on a vegan diet? Is that English breakfast tea or English breakfast what?
That's a good question. Define English breakfast.
Yes. Yes. Please define English breakfast. And then we got JJ saying your story motivates me and your energy. Yeah,
Oh,
JJ's great.
JJ is
And
awesome. I know JJ. Yeah, she's awesome.
yeah, she loves your wife and hopes she feels better. And
Oh,
then someone else, I'm not sure who this is, but hi, my vegan friends. I'm so happy to see you. We're happy to see you too. Let us know if you have questions. We're waiting to see what Nick says, what English breakfast is. I mean, I don't traditional. What's traditional English breakfast?
I'm just thinking. So I lived in Bristol for a few months with Anna when we were moving back over to the States. Um, there's actually there's a English breakfast actually could mean quite a few different things. It could mean like scrambled eggs. It could be I think they have, if I remember correctly, I think it was grits, something along the lines like that. They
Uh-huh.
have some sort of oats. It could mean a few things.
Well, we'll hold on that then. So let me ask you this. Okay, so I hear this a lot. People, vegans that are saying, I don't want people to know I'm vegan because I'm not in shape and I'm not representing, so I'm
Mm,
ashamed of my body. And what would you say to those people?
I think if you truly value something, then hiding or diminishing yourself is actually the biggest disservice that you would do to yourself. And as somebody, and I deeply resonate with that statement, by the way. I grew up with very low self-esteem. I grew up in an environment in a childhood where I was consistently told I'm not good enough, right? I'm a liar, I'm a cheat, I'm never going to amount to anything in my life. And I took that belief on. I truly, truly embodied that belief for many, many years. I brought that belief to how I played in sports, to school, to relationships, to everything, to how I even looked at myself in the mirror, right? There was years that I went by and I wouldn't even look at myself in the eyes in the mirror, right? And it's something that I found that even now, like over the past few years, that it's easier for us to actually make ourselves small, right? It's easier for us actually to, believe that, we're not good enough, to diminish ourselves. And at the same time, what you do is a reflection of who you are, right? And this comes from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. He says, what you do is a reflection of who you are, right? So if you act small, then you're going to be small, right? If you diminish yourself, right? If you don't express yourself, then you're going to live a life that's reflective of those traits, of those values. And the point that I'm trying to hit across here is that if health and fitness and veganism and being a positive role model is truly important for you, then I would challenge you to actually examine this for yourself and say, you know what? If this is actually important for me, then why don't I actually step forward? Why don't I actually stand up for the one person who matters the most, which is myself, right? You see, self-care is actually the highest care, right? Believe it or not, most of us think like, no, taking care of the animals or the planet or everyone else on the planet is more important than ourselves. But we're not martyrs, right? Actually leading by example is the most effective way and the fastest way to influence everyone around you, right? Being small, being diminished, right? Reducing your power, like Madi said earlier, not coming from your center. That's very normal, but it's not actually natural, right? I'll share one more quote here. Krishnamurti, one of the favorite quotes that he shares is that it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly ill society. It's no measure of health. So even if you're actually healthy and you're fit and you're strong, but if you're making yourself small, if you're not speaking up, you are compliant, right? You are part of the actual problem, right? So the more that we speak up, the more that we actually take back our power, the more easily we can actually change how our societies are all across the planet.
You're right. And we're so caught up in this, I'm not enough. I mean, so many, I mean, just when you were saying, that you were hearing these beliefs of you'll never amount to anything, that was what happened to me too. And I had to fight
Mm,
my way out of that. And I was, so in the Mexican culture, I mean, for me, being a little Mexican girl growing up in the United States, or with Mexican parents, right? But identified with the United States culture, which was very confusing, also. But for me, like, where do I fit in now? But they didn't want me to be. They didn't want me to shine, really, because the women are not meant to be. They're meant to be passive. So as a little girl, I was always scared and shy, and it didn't serve me. And I don't even know what the point I was making, but that was the I'm not enough belief.
Yeah,
And so I'm not enough. So just always going through my mind. And that's how I showed up. And then that's what I threw out to the world. Look, everybody, here I am. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. Right. And then people say, okay, I hear you. You're not enough. And we don't want to hire you. We don't want to be around you. So it's very important that we know that we're enough right now. We don't have to do anything else. We are enough. We have this beautiful gift of life, and all these uncovered talents that we've pushed down that we don't see because I'm not enough is blocking us from seeing it.
100%. 100%. One of our students, she mentioned last week, she was joking. She's like, Gabriel, every time I'm on one of your classes or we're, you're coaching, or, she's like, you always have like your sayings, right? Your Gabriel isms, right? I have one more I just want to add right here. Piggybacking off of what you just shared there. Who you are speaks so loudly, I can't even hear what you're saying, right? The energy that we put out actually is already being communicated and understood by everyone else. So whether we think like nobody knows that that I am playing small, or I'm diminishing myself, or that, I don't feel great, actually they do, right? Whether it's conscious or subconscious, we're all energy never lies. That's a simple answer, right? We can mess around with our words and we can say a different thing, but energy will never lie.
You're right. And I have people that I know that say, oh, I mean, I know that their self-esteem is low, and they're like, oh, well, I don't show that to the world. I mean, you can't hide that, like you're saying. You can't hide that. That's coming out in the way you present yourself. It's coming out the way you speak, the way you look at people. It's all revealed, and there's no way to hide that. So especially as vegans, and we want to be positive influence on this vegan world, we want to be attractants. It's so important that we stand in our power, and people are like, my gosh, look at you. What's making you glow, right? Why are you living in peace? That they come to us and they want to know more. And if we're playing small, they're not going to want to know. They're not going to want to be around someone or want to know how do we play small.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yes. So, well, this is very insightful, and we could talk about all the emotional, but let's not talk about all of that right now.
We'll be here for like 2 days if we go down that route.
Let's talk more about the vegan fitness, because I think that's what everybody wants to hear about. So what would you say about, what are the benefits of vegan fitness compared to, let's see, carnivore fitness, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Well, let's start off with, no heart disease, no blocked arteries.
Wait a minute, I got a question. You see people, like all these people that do eat meat, and they're great athletes, and then they drop dead, and they're like, why did they drop dead? They were, working out all the time and doing all this. What's the cause behind that?
Having a six-pack does not equate to having a healthy body, right? And it's something myself included, I was so freaking indoctrinated thinking that, being super lean, being super toned, showcasing, taking my shirt off, I thought that, you must be a symbol of health. Well, here's the thing. And the Chinese knew this for thousands of years, right? What's inside is directly impacting the outside. So it's actually possible. You could get super lean. You could drop 20, 30, 40 pounds. You could have a six-pack and just eat donuts and pizza. It's actually possible. If you play around with the calories, you play around with the macros, it's actually possible. Now, I'm sure we would both agree, you're probably not going to be the most healthiest, right? And coming back to the initial question that you asked, so in terms of, really animal products and meat, and we don't know the impact, of years or decades of, housing some of those ingredients and products throughout our body. We just don't know, right? But we actually do know, because now the science is proving it, right? It's proving that actually you can see the blocked arteries, the heart disease, like you mentioned, like people dropping dead. It's like, the evidence is there, it's mounting, right? And yet, and this is unfortunate, but people people would rather believe a lie than actually believe that they've been lied to most of their life, right? This was me for so many years. I could not believe, like, oh my God, why did no one ever tell me about this, right? But it takes burning up ignorance, right? It takes burning up the ignorance that's accumulated from not only our own lifetime, but from the previous generations. They passed on their beliefs, right? It's like, hey, this is what I mean. Like, eggs are healthy, right? Dairy is healthy. No, actually, I mean, if we want to go down this rabbit hole, they actually show, and Anthony William, he talks a lot about this. Really, really great author, really, really great health advocate. He talks about how in the classified medical industry, they actually use eggs to feed viruses. They use eggs, right? And they know this, right? So it's like, again, coming back in full circle, this is all by design, right? Like, we are being kept in ignorance. We're being kept in poor health because why? If we're empowered, if we're healthy, fit, and strong, you can't keep someone down like that, right? It's easier to keep somebody down or diminished or small when they're not healthy, right? When they're kept in the dark, right? But when we start to regain our power, oh my goodness, it's like you start to burn up so much ignorance, and then you can go down all the rabbit holes.
Right. And that's what's amazing, that anybody, like Dr. Will Tuttle said, it's amazing that anybody's vegan, that anybody questioned,
Yeah,
right? That anybody saw the light, because we're trapped in this culture that's teaching us quite the opposite. And then, I mean, if we start to break down, if everyone is healthy, the doctors would lose out, the hospitals would lose out, the pharmacies would lose out. I mean, all these big corporations, not to mention, of course, all the meat
oh my
industries would lose
goodness.
out. I mean, and so that's a scary thing. It's like, no wonder people are like, wait a minute. I mean, like, they know someone that's a doctor. We can't believe this because that would threaten their livelihood,
Of
you know?
course. Yeah. Yeah. It's, like the depth of how the level of manipulation and disinformation and misinformation, it goes deep. And the deeper that you start to peel back the layers of your own level of self-awareness, you start to question and reflect and start to say, you know what? Actually, this is important for me. My health, my body, my fitness, it is important. And that means you got to burn up some ignorance, right? You got to go through some of this process.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got to take responsibility for your own life, and then question. And is this what I was taught? Is this something that I just
Mm,
picked up as a child? Now that I'm older, what is really happening here? I mean, in all areas of life, we want to do this, not just to accept, because it's not that
absolutely.
like it wasn't that like my parents hated me and they
Yeah.
just didn't know.
They
They
didn't
didn't
know.
know,
Yeah.
right? They were
Yeah.
doing the best they could. They thought I
Yes.
had to have, my scrambled eggs with the bacon little bits in there, and the
Yeah.
milk, which I hated, and all, and ugh. But anyway, yeah, they thought that's what it was. So, I'm looking at some comments we got here. A lot of comments now all of a sudden popping up. Um, let's see. Mary saying there's so much controversy about how vegan food is made, like bees being brought in and killed to grow vegan
Mm,
food, and how land forests are cut to grow vegetables. And how do I deal with all this negativity? I'm Mary.
mm. I think this is a great comment right here. And again, coming back to what we just spoke about, misinformation, disinformation. It's like when people start to wake up, they start to take ownership, they start to take responsibility. Of course, it's like, holy crap, you're challenging the status quo, right? You're challenging now. Now you're talking to the big giants, the pharmaceutical, the medical. It's like, whoa, whoa. Of course, now let's feed more misinformation. Oh my God, the vegan food is destroying all the bees. Oh my God, we're killing all the land forests. Everybody, especially if you're vegan, you're aware that how many of the rainforest is being killed by just the cows, right? It's just like, there's so many opportunities for people to be misled. And yet at the same time, come back to what Mariquita just said, question everything, especially if it's coming from the mainstream media. Most of these outlets are being controlled, right? They're being controlled by these bigger giants. Question everything. Do your own research. Probably don't do it on the mainstream outlets, but question everything.
Climate Healers. Climate Healers is a great place to go find out information. I know that
Mm.
about 40%. I have this great book right here. It's right here. Eat for the Planet.
Oh, nice,
If you can see
nice.
it, it's a
Yeah.
really great book, and it's talking about 40% of the land on our planet is being taken up by animal agriculture, and there's no sewers. All that's going into the water systems and the air, and it's
Mm.
destroying the communities. I mean, these poor people have got respiratory illnesses,
Oh my
cancer
God.
from these factory
Jeez.
farms. I mean, all that waste, not to mention the poor animals that are living and they never see the sun. That ammonia burns
Mm.
their skin. It's just horrendous, and my heart breaks for them. I mean,
Mm.
no sentient being should live like that. And
Yes.
I mean, I don't know where we've come as a society to say that these animals that are so beautiful, pigs and cows who are so loving, just as we are, I mean, that they don't count.
Mm.
It's really sad, and it's just really hurting. I mean, it's hurting when we hurt a part of this universe, like the animals or any kind of part of the trees,
Anything.
the rainforest.
Anything.
We reap,
Mhm.
we sow what we reap. We just the
It's the law of cause and effect. Whatever you do, it's gonna have a boomerang effect. It's always, whether it's immediate, whether it's 5 years down the line, 20 years, there's always an impact.
right. And my best friend passed away from uh, atherosclerosis, which I can't say, and boom, like that, no warning, nothing. So he worked in the restaurants, and we ate a lot of restaurant food. And he was like me, but he wasn't a vegan. I mean, he was very energetic, very happy,
Mm.
but I mean, he was on his feet all. You would think he was walking all the time, so he was always moving, always moving. He wasn't even 50; he was in his late 40s, and he passed in the middle of the night from this build up. I know JJ was talking about it um, on her channel, the Meatless Mondays on YouTube, about how the drain, like the drain with
Mm.
the grease, and it builds up, builds up, builds up, and then it's blocked, right? So,
Mhm.
and it's scary. It's scary for me to think. I have a lot of beautiful friends that are not vegan, and I'm scared, or whole food plant based, man, that are that I think, oh my gosh, I just pray for them. I don't want them to have strokes. I don't want them to have heart attacks. And pills are not the answer. I want them to live and eat where
Yes.
they're thriving. So I
Yes.
was even now I'm going to talk about that book. I'm looking at it right now, Salt, Sugar, Fat, and they're talking about the processed foods sitting there for weeks and months. So those
Mm.
foods are dead. These
Mhm.
living foods is where we're getting our nutrients, where we get our
Mm.
energy from, and
Mm.
where
Mm.
someone at the grocery store was talking to me. She wanted to know about the tofu that I had, and I told
Mm.
her, I eat tofu with my vegetables every day, and so I told her that I know people in the 70s and 80s that are not on any medicine, any pills, nothing, and they're thriving. And I said, there's the produce section, and that's it. That's the key to this, right? The living foods, not these
Yes.
processed foods that are sitting around for months and years for us to eat. My gosh, it's so scary. Why are
Mm.
those even called foods,
Yeah.
right? Oh,
Absolutely.
and so Mary's asking about the book, but yeah, I can send it to you for anyone. It's called Eat for the Planet, and sometimes the comments don't go up, but it's Saving the World One Bite at a Time by Neil Zacharias and
Very
Jean
nice.
Stone. But here it is again, and it's
Nice.
very easy to read. They've got, I mean, it's like right here. I mean, it's very easy graphics. It
Oh, I
says
love it.
In the US, livestock produces 130 times more waste than humans. All this waste contributes to air and water pollution as well as public health concerns. It is so sad. It talks about the dead zones, and it breaks my heart. So it's wonderful when we can get the information that we don't have to live like this. Like,
Mhm.
you know, doesn't tofu have pesticides in it, and it causes what, CA at one time? Well, I try to buy organic. I mean, I think it's scary now that there's a lot of things that have pesticides that are organic, and
Yeah, and it's a great point. It's something actually we've done a lot of research into with even the organics, like they're still putting pesticides on it. That's how crazy, this is now. And it's I think coming back to the main theme of what we've talked about here, it's empowering ourselves. Empower yourself, educate yourself. By the way, the word educate comes from the Latin root, which means to develop within, right? Education, by the way, took a very negative connotation, especially if you went to high school, college, just more education. No, educate actually means develop within, right? Internally, right? Develop the mental, the emotional, the spiritual faculties to actually question, to discern, right? Holy crap. Yeah, actually, man, this is happening, right? And what can we do about it, right? How can we make a stand? How can we actually step up as role models?
Right. Yes. And what about, so I know that tofu got a bad rap and soy got a bad rap for a long time. What could you say about that? Because I know that it's not anymore now. I've heard, from many sources that wasn't necessary. That wasn't right.
Hmm. There with soy in particular, there has been some genetic modification. I mean, there's no way around it. It's I guess, if you're thinking about like from the perspective of, and I want to be mindful of my language here. I guess the lesser of two evils, right? It's like, all right, if I'm getting organic tofu, definitely gonna be better than, like animal products or meat or things like that. At the same time, like, it's also understanding that there might be some modification, with the tofu, but at the same time, it's, we still need to get our protein in, especially if you're working on, like we spoke about, building muscle, getting stronger, getting tone. If you're just working on health, maybe you don't need tofu then. If you're just purely you just want to be healthy, you don't care about getting toned, fat loss, any of that, probably you'll be fine without tofu. But it's being mindful. One in particular, and we've learned this from, I'll reference again, Anthony William, corn. Corn is a huge one. Corn at this point is completely genetically modified. It is nuts. And it's unfortunate. I'm a huge lover of popcorn. I freaking love popcorn. And it's just something we decided, you know what? We don't know the impact on that, on eating that for long periods of time. So I think soy is kind of like that gray zone, because it's not, as far as I'm aware, I don't think it's every source of soy, but definitely corn at this point is just,
I
yeah,
love corn. I'm sad.
I know. Me too. Me too.
And
Yeah.
it's scary when you talk about, and we got to get off here soon. I know we're
Yeah.
coming up on the end of the hour, but
Yeah.
when you talk about the tomatoes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then they've got the fish, the GMOs and all that. It's like
Hmm.
fish cells. It's scary. I mean,
Oh
it's
my goodness.
terrible. My
It
gosh.
is.
So the main thing here is to, I'll sum this up and then
Yeah.
I'll let you sum it up and tell everybody where they can reach you and everything. So,
Yes.
um, that we want you to empower yourselves. We want you to do the research, right? You don't necessarily listen to us. I mean, you
Yes.
don't have to believe us. We want you to get out there and look it up for yourself. There's climate healers, Eat for the Planet. There's Jane Esselstyn. I don't know how to spell that,
Mhm.
but these great doctors, Dr. Colin Campbell, and then the rice. What's it called? No, what's the book called?
Which book? Which book?
Um, is it the rice? It's not the rice study, but I can't remember what it's called now.
The China study.
Yeah, the
China study.
China study, the China study, the China study. So he talks about cancer and meat,
Yes.
the
Yes.
link between cancer and meat eating. There's
Yes.
what the health is a documentary, Game Changers. These are things
So
you can
many
watch.
good ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
So many good ones. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, and so Gabriel, tell us your last whatever you want to say and where everybody can get a hold of you.
Sure. I guess, just to piggyback off what you just shared there, um, if we are serious and committed about our health, our fitness, and our body, then really taking full ownership, taking full responsibility, and saying, if it's meant to be, it's up to me, right? If I want to be healthy, if I want to be fit, if I want to be strong, it's my body, right? We only have one body as far as we're aware, right? Why not maximize my health, my longevity, my fitness, and actually live each day enjoying it to the fullest, right? Feeling strong, feeling fit, and inspiring others along the way. So that's my closing words there. Really appreciate you, Mari, having us here. If anybody is interested, we do have a free Facebook group. So I'm sure Mari will drop the link in below. We offer a lot of free training classes every week, a lot of free resources, and it'll be great to chat with some of you in there as well.
What's the name of the group and what's the website they can reach you at?
Sure. So the group would be, and let me just pull it up right here. It is Vegan Fitness Redefined Community. And then our website is veganfitnessredefined.com.
Okay. So the main thing we need to remember is Vegan Fitness Redefined, and we'll be able to find you.
Yes, that is correct.
Right. Because, I mean, it's never too late to start, right? Start now.
Absolutely.
If you're
Absolutely.
alive watching this, it's time. This is the universe saying, time to start. So I'm so grateful for all the beautiful viewers that have been watching, JJ and Mary and who else? Let's see. um, well, I can't see Nick and someone else, whoever's watching. I'm thankful for you all. I'm thankful for Gabriel and for sending love to Anna that she's feeling better. And we'll have
Thank
to
you.
do this again because this has been very informative. And I feel this wonderful, I feel great energy in this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Madi. Thank you for having me on. Definitely, we'll have to do a recap of this. And thanks again for the conversation.
All right. Blessings, everyone. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.